Well, it's always the same, every rock and roll band. It's not just Slade, it's every rock and roll band's the same. They split up because egos, money.
Noddy Holder possessed the stadium-shaking voice. His playing career was a legend in which records were shattered, crowds were electrified, and his name was etched into the annals of rock history. But what occurred when the lights dimmed was far from the fairy tale the fans assumed. Fractures that never mended, decisions that would haunt him, and a twist so cruel it had nearly stilled even his monumental roar. Noddy Holder is 79 now, and the reality about how he arrived here is practically too sorrowful to believe. The ascension of Noddy Holder. Whenever British rock legends are being discussed, Noddy Holder's name never fails to come up. His voice, his image, and his songs defined an entire period. Noddy became the name of the 1970s, the face of glam rock, and the voice which still thunders from radios on Christmas Day. But although Noddy Holder's ascent to fame was dramatic, what followed the fame would leave people stunned. Noddy Holder was born in 1946 to a working-class family where money counted. Music wasn't part of some kind of family tradition or great opportunity passed down to him. Rather, he had to pursue it on his own, and it soon became obvious that he possessed a natural talent. Noddy had already assembled his first band, the Rockin' Phantoms, at the age of 13. While the other children were still trying to find out what they wanted to do, Noddy was already on stage with a mic singing along to songs with a voice that no one could help but notice. Even at that time, Noddy's voice was different. It was raspy and loud and powerful, and could fill up a room and cut right through the din. His father encouraged him, even allowing Noddy to drive the family van to gigs for not just his own group, but other musicians as well. One of them was said to be Robert Plantway, before Led Zeppelin by his late adolescence. Noddy was already moving up to professional circles. He became a member of Steve Brett and the Mavericks, an EMI sign band. They released a few singles that didn't do anything, but this was the exposure Noddy craved. He was now in the recording studio with labels and getting to see how the music industry actually worked. Noddy's own break came in 1966 when he became a member of a band called the In-Betweens. It was a local band at the time struggling to find itself. A few years later, though, the band would evolve into something much larger. They became Slade, the band that made Noddy Holder a household name. Slade burst onto the British music scene with a style that could not be denied. Glam rock was spectacle, glitter, and brazenness. And Slade went all out on it. The crazy clothes, the stomping beat, and the blast of guitars were larger than life. But the hub of it was Noddy's unmissable voice, which could make a song an anthem. But he wasn't only his voice. There was his writing too. Noddy wasn't merely the frontman. He was also one of the principal songwriters along with bassist Jim Lee. They crafted smash hit after smash hit for Mama, We're All Crazy Now, to Goodbye to Jane, and Mary XM, everybody name a few. That single sold more than 1.1 million copies in Britain and never disappeared. Each year, Noddy's voice returns like clockwork, thundering through shopping malls, the radio, and TV specials, becoming one of the most renowned Christmas songs ever. Slade went on to have 15 albums with their original members and score a very long list of top singles. They were not only riding the glam rock wave, they were at its helm. Their dodgy spellings of song names, their hyperactive gigs, and Noddy's voice that would never be forgotten cemented them as the icons of the 1970s. But whereas the ascension was mythic, the life of Noddy Holder that came after the limelight paled spectacularly compared to the fairy tale that others might have envisioned. Behind the sparkles and the din was another tale full of pain, hardship, and heartache that no one expected from the fans. The dark side of the spotlight. Noddy Holder had by the early 1970s reached the pinnacle of British rock and was unstoppable with Slade. Their records weren't background tracks. They were spectacles, anthems people screamed at the top of their voice. The ascension had been phenomenal, but what no one noticed was the price it took. Because winning at that level, though glitzy from the outside, was totally draining from the inside out. For Noddy, Stardom wasn't a smooth ride. Slade life equaled continual recording, continual performing, and living in suitcases year in and year out. Every town, every stage, and every demand from fans compounded the pressure. And though Noddy behaved like the larger-than-life frontman the fans loved, beneath the voice and the glitter, he remained a man who never lost his sense of where he started. This kept him from spiraling like most rock stars of his generation. But it didn't save him from the grind of constant fame. There was a moment that might have altered the course of his life entirely. In 1980, following the surprise passing of Bon Scott, AC/DC required a new lead vocalist. They were already destined to become one of the most dominant rock bands in the world, and being able to fill their frontman's shoes would have been career-defining. Noddy Holder was apparently sought out for the task. He could have left Slade and become the lead singer of one of the biggest hard rock bands of all time, but he passed. Loyal to Slade and the band members he had worked with to establish his career, Noddy declined AC/DC. It was a choice that shocked most, but it demonstrated that he was never ever going to leave behind the people who had been with him. Even amidst the wildness of the rock environment, Noddy remained grounded. He didn't fall into the never-ending vortex of drugs and devastation that consumed so many of the stars of his time. He was known to be the voice that could rattle arenas, but offstage he appreciated family, routine, and humor. That ability to remain level-headed served him well through years in an industry that devours people. But even with that balance, there were cracks eventually. By the early 1990s, Noddy had dedicated over 2 decades of his life to Slade. He traveled the globe, penned the hits, and led the band through success and adversity for years. At more than 26 years, the stress was inescapable. Burnout became inevitable, and so did the awareness that life was passing him by while he remained in the rotation of touring and recording. In 1992, Noddy Holder made the surprise move that angered fans when he left Slade, and it had nothing to do with anger or scandal. Noddy simply needed time for himself, his family, and a break from the constant grind that had filled his adult life. Walking away from the band that had defined him wasn't easy, but Noddy didn't disappear. Instead, he reinvented himself and shifted from rock stardom to television and radio. In the late 1990s, fans got to witness another side of him when he appeared in the ITV comedy drama The Grimmels, where he was a quirky music teacher, and it was evident that Noddy was not just an onstage performer. She actually had some acting talent, and her fans were thrilled about it. TV opened up new avenues, and Noddy made guest appearances as himself on millions of programs, never failing to bring humor and warmth and never failing to demonstrate that he could laugh at himself. He was a regular on radio also, recounting tales from his musical life, reminiscing about Slade's glory days, and demonstrating that he was a natural performer. Individuals who may not have grown up with Slade now knew him as a charming, witty TV personality whose humor, narrative, and larger-than-life personality made him a figure beloved in front rooms throughout the UK. Even so, as much as Noddy Holder appeared to glide effortlessly into this new phase of existence, the reality was that years in the limelight had already worn him down, because fame provided him with everything that he had ever fantasized about, but it also exhausted him in ways that only eventually became apparent. The constant traveling, the stress of maintaining a band at its best, and the compromises he made along the way all took their toll. Noddy avoided the darker dependencies of rock, but he could not avoid the fact that fame wears people out. And yet, in classic Noddy Holder fashion, he flipped that darkness into something the public could still adore because he refused to let burnout get the best of him. Instead, he reinvented, remained relevant, and became someone who could still make the public smile even after hanging up the microphone. But most fans never realized the actual reason that Slade broke up, because even though their tunes live on forever as anthems of fun, the history of the group itself was fraught with tensions that would boil over eventually. All appearances to the contrary, Slade seemed unbeatable. They had the records, the tours, the public, and the drive of a band that was literally born to take over the stage. But beneath all that glitz on the surface, in the hotel bedrooms, on the tour buses, and in the studios, things were very much bleaker. Noddy Holder himself would later explain the issues in blunt terms, stating that the breakup of Slade was brought on by the same toxins which had destroyed so many groups before. In an interview, he explained, "I always say there are 5 things that cause a band to break up. The first one is egos, the second one is money, the third one is drink and illegal drugs, the fourth one is women, and the fifth one is musical differences. And in the case of Slade, it was all five. This mixture was explosive, and for a band who lived at the height of fame, it was only a question of time before it overtook them. Slade's internal conflict wasn't just personality or indulgence. It was also direction. And in 1975, the band undertook a bold action that revealed just how split they actually were when they released a feature film entitled Slade in Flame. Unlike the glamorous, tinsel-covered idea enthusiasts hoped for, the film was a surprise. It was neither a comedy nor a frivolous romp through the glam rock years, but rather a searing, brutally honest portrayal of the music industry, the greed, manipulation, and personal wreckage that accompanied the pursuit of fame. Criticisms adored it. For once, Slade weren't thin, cartoonish glam heroes. They were artists revealing the underbelly of the same machine that had elevated them. But whilst critics lapped it up, fans couldn't figure out what to make of it. Fans who were looking for the band's party person side were not prepared to accept a film on exploitation and heartbreak, and it commercially disadvantaged them. Popularity suffered, and rather than enhancing their image, the film pulled them down. In a recent interview, talking about why the film didn't work, Noddy admitted, "It's not at all what people were expecting from us at the time, especially the fans. They were expecting a happy-go-lucky, cheeky, chappy image sort of film, and what they received was this hard-hitting insight into the goings-on of a rock band in the music industry. And I think it shocked the fans. But within the band, not everybody had initially been signed up to the project because guitarist Dave Hill loathed it. He had signed on to be in a band that was all about energy, showmanship, and over-the-top fun, not for a downbeat movie that portrayed their world in the bleakest possible terms, and Hill's anger at Slade and Flame merely entrenched the fissures that were already beginning to develop within the band. Creative control had become a battleground. Noddy and bassist Jim Lee went for the artistic gamble, while others were adamant in trying to keep things straightforward and fun, and tragically this dichotomy would remain long after the movie came out. And as if things weren't tense enough, tragedy hit the band in a way that left indelible marks. In 1973, drummer Don Powell was in a horrific car accident where his fiancée Angela Morris was killed instantly, and Powell himself suffered serious injuries, including permanent brain damage. He lay in a coma for weeks, and when he finally regained consciousness, he suffered from memory loss that would plague him for the rest of his life. Powell's injuries not only hurt him personally, they hurt the entire band. While filming Slade in Flame, he was so bad off that he couldn't even recall some of his lines, reportedly, and actually he had to be reminded of who he was and where he was, even in the midst of production. The rest of the members had to jump in time, and again,